guys, welcome back. Today we're going to pick up where we left off, talking about dynastic legions. We have one left to get through, and then we'll move on. The Nihilakh Dynasty. Woe to the army that trespasses upon the domains of the Nihilakh. In times of antiquity, the dynasty built vast treasure worlds filled with wealth, plundered from 1,000 civilizations. Regal in war and glorious in battle, the warriors of Nihilakh have ever worn turquoise and gold as their dynastic colors, both symbolic of wealth and nobility in Necron tier culture. When the Nihilakh awoke from hibernation, it was to find their once mighty realm in ruins. Looking inward, the dynasty gathered what strength they still possessed to their crown world, Gedin. Now, they jealously guard the remaining wonders of their empire, and protect the many worlds that make up the constellations of the Nihilakh, shoring up their borders against all intrusion. It is said that the splendors of the Nihilakh treasure houses eclipse those of all other dynasties combined. Arrogant and proud, the dynasty's overlords ensure that none forget the great wealth of their people, and so have their cryptex work precious metals and jewels into the armor of the legions. There are even rumors that some Nihilakh overlords carry prized relics of the past into battle, borne upon their war engines as reminders of their ancient triumphs. Greatest among the dynasty's treasures is the Yith Seer, the preserved head of an alien prophet who was the last of its race. Using neurographic resonators to peer into the prophet's mind, the overlords have witnessed the future of their race. And it is for this future that the Nihilakh gather their legions for war. Ancient empires returned. Novokh. The crimson armor of the Novokh is a bloody legacy of past victories over the unworthy. Though creatures of living metal long parted with their flesh, the Novokh remember the rites of bloodying undertaken by the warriors during the ancient wars of succession. The favored of the Novokh would daub their faces and arms in the blood of those whom they slew. In battle, painting spidery patterns of hieroglyphs telling grim tales of carnage and death. Millennia later, the Novokh still remember these ceremonies, and their overlords paint their legions crimson in honor of the ritual spilling of blood. To the warriors and immortals of the Novokh, this fragment of their past awakens a spark of violent pride and spurs them on to acts of murder. Nephrekh. The trinary stars of the Nephrekh crown world glow golden upon the burnished shoulders of its legions. Rich is the solar wealth of scores of systems. The Nephrekh's worlds cluster around the galactic core, its radiant brilliance filling the skies of their tomb worlds with a near limitless supply of energy. From this golden chalice of flame, the warriors of Nephrekh drink deep and grow strong. Pharaon, Sylphek awoke consumed by an obsession with the stars themselves, announcing to his bemused court he wished to drape himself in their molten glory. To placate their lord, the cryptex of the Nephrekh crafted him a living gold skin, a gift he has shared with his followers, so that they might embody the glory of the triple sons of Nephrekh as they do battle. Thokt. The shifting void rifts of the Hierarchy depths hide the core worlds of the Thokt Dynasty and their legions. Wreathed in sparking blue energy, the crystalline continent dooms of the Thokt feed upon the power of the rifts, the sky overhead thick with rippling darkness and flickering blue comets. As their armies emerge from their stasis crypts to bring death to their foes, dull metal skulls reflect the cold sapphire stars far above. Harnessing this potent radiation, the Thokt cryptex have fashioned rad receptors into the weaponry of their soldiers, a symptom of which is the shimmering azure light that emanates from their eyes, Gauss flares, and even the cracks in their mechanical forms. When the Thokt gather for war, the barely contained power of the Hierarchy void rifts is ready to be unleashed upon their foes. Karnavak. Ravaged by the coming of the Tyrannid fleets, the legions of Karnavak cling defiantly to the edges of the eastern fringe. Their crypts overrun by the Great Devourer, and their doom worlds defiled by the Imperium, the dynasty musters its extemporary cohorts to gather up the fallen and awaken the dead for war once more. Lords and overlords put aside their petty differences, for the fate of their dynasty hangs in the balance. In honor of their destroyed core worlds, the Karnavak bear the colors of night unending, dark blue markings upon skull, shoulder, and weapon. The higher a Necron's rank within the dynasty, the more blue he wears. As befits his status, Pharaon Thoek's living metal body is entirely midnight blue, and his form is obscured by a shroud of captive shadow. And now we're going to move on to unit descriptions, which are still lore. But it's something I've sort of tried to walk back a little bit. Unfortunately, I like these guys, but there isn't enough content for me to keep doing more broad-scale lore videos. So anyways. Overlords. The Overlords of the Necrons lead the legions into the carnage of war, commanding absolute authority over their subordinates. Armed with crackling war scythes and potent weaponry of ancient design, they dispatch their foes in flares of blinding energy. Contemptuous of the lesser races, overlords are utterly convinced of their own superiority and act accordingly. Only those who prove themselves worthy by showing courage and skill at arms might earn a quick death. For all others, agony and humiliation await. As befits their rank, the Necron royalty were given even the finest bodies during biotransference. Whereas lesser Necrons had their minds dimmed and their personalities crushed beneath oppressive obedience protocols, the nobles' mental strength swelled. Unconstrained by the weakness of mortal flesh, there was at last no limit to their ambitions. However, the eons of sleep have had unforeseen consequences upon the lords of the Necrons, and the unforgiving claws of time have rent at their psyches. Many have succumbed to madness, seeing the galaxy through a veil of insanity, though this makes them no less dangerous for their foes. The various dynasties maintain a bewildering array of different ranks and titles, but some terms are fairly consistent throughout the Necron Empire. The ruler of each tomb world is known as a regent, while Nemesor is the title bestowed upon an overall battlefield commander, to whose will all Necron forces will be slaved. Overlord Nazar, the almighty vengeance of Sekemtar, drove his void blade deep into his foe. The creature snarled at him through fanged teeth, even as the shimmering edge of Nazar's sword ate away its flesh like water washing away sand. Tearing the void blade free, the Overlord let the dead thing drop to his feet as he looked for a worthier foe. Then, from amongst the press of gray-armored enemies, one appeared. Clad in the primitive ceramite shell of its kind, the newcomer charged toward Nazar, bellowing a challenge. Its scarred face contorted in rage, the warrior raised a crude-looking axe. With practiced ease, the Overlord parried his foe's first blow, ancient mechanical limbs pushing back against genetically enhanced muscle. In quick succession, the warrior rained down a dozen blows upon Nazar, the fury of his enemy's attacks pushing him back. For a fleeting moment, the Overlord enjoyed the sensation of facing a true challenge. And somewhere deep within his mind, he remembered the faint taste of fear that mortals feel when confronted with their own demise. However, like always, all too soon the glorious feeling slipped away. In its place, there was only the yawning gulf where his soul might have been, and the same familiar malaise of boredom. Mastering his ennui, Nazar decapitated his foe with an expert backswing, sidestepping the vivid spray of gore that followed. As his foe collapsed, he looked out into the melee for another who might test his skills. Warriors. Marching across the smoking battlefields of the 41st millennium in relentless metallic ranks, Necron Warriors are the unfeeling foot soldiers of the Pharaons. Once, long ago, these were the common people of the Necron tier. Their minds reduced to a shadow of consciousness, they have become the slave legions of the Overlords. Traded and branded like livestock, Necron warriors are valued only for the destruction they can visit upon the foe. The Pharaons coldly send them into battle to crush their enemies beneath an avalanche of living metal. Even with only a glimmer of consciousness to guide it, a Necron warrior is a fearsome and resilient foe. Armed with ancient energy weapons, they can can scythe down their enemies with lethal volleys of Gauss flare fire, while their unyielding metal bodies repair themselves should they sustain damage. That the remains of the Necrontier's mind, trapped in the Necron's Warriors' time-worn form, is only vaguely aware of the ebb and flow of battle, makes little difference to its foes as they are ground underfoot. What care I that my legions are faceless? Identity matters only to those who have the ability to think. My Immortals and Lychguard perhaps, Lords and Cryptex certainly. For the remainder of my vassals, well, suffice to say that the concept of glory is wasted on the inglorious. Imhotep the Stormlord, Pharaoh of the Thokt Dynasty. Legion Colors. The living metal form of a Necron warrior is a marvel of ancient science. It can bear myriad colors, textures, and markings, and the Necron warriors of 2 dynasties are seldom alike. Some appear as if forged from burnished silver to steel, their hard shells untarnished by age. Others appear as if cast from ceramics, stone, or even glass, hinting at the strange technologies used to create them. Over these unyielding surfaces, the symbols and colors of the dynasties proudly proclaim the warrior's allegiance. Necrons are haunted by the echoes of their proud militaristic past, and consequently retain the pageantry of their once great empire. Thokt warriors employ the cold silver and electric green used by their Pharaoh Imhotep, as the bearing of these colors has ever been regarded as the prerogative of the greatest leaders of the Necrontier. By contrast, Nephrekh warriors are golden skin, hinting at the dynasty's immense solar wealth. The Thokt favor the cold blue of their crown world's immense void reefs, while the soldiery of Iresk wear the crystal of their system's asteroids. Though the death of stars and the destruction of worlds has changed the celestial landscape of the Necron Empire, these fragments of its past live on. Immortals. Immortals march implacably towards their enemies, their guns unleashing a storm of Gauss energy that flays the very flesh from their foes. Forged from the warrior caste of the Necrontier, Immortals are the embodiment of the Necron's dominance over the galaxy. During the War in Heaven, it was the Immortals that led the vanguard of the Necron's armies. Now, millions of years later, they are once again assuming their place at the forefront of the Necron's wars of galactic conquest. Bigger and more resilient than a Necron warrior, Immortals can shrug off damage that would fell even one of the legendary Adeptus Astartes. Within the engrammatic circuitry of each Immortal, there lingers a spark of the mortal soldier he once was. Though heavily suppressed by the obedience protocols of his master, an Immortal remembers the triumph of the kill and the pleasure of humbling its foes. The transition from mortal flesh to undying alien metal has only deepened the Immortals' hatred of their enemies. Stripped of weaknesses such as remorse and pity, pity and bereft of any fear of death, the soldier kills without hesitation. An Immortal's only desires to enforce the will of his overlord and reclaim the glory of the Necron Empire. With a dozen legions of Immortals at my command, I could humble the stars themselves. One will be more than sufficient to crush your pathetic world. Imhotep the Stormlord, Pharaoh of the Thokt Dynasty. Iresk felt only disdain for his foes as he dragged his mangled body towards them. One of his legs had been shorn away, the sparking stump scraping across the dusty ground behind him. In life, such a wound would have been a death sentence for the Necrontyr soldier, but now it was merely a momentary inconvenience, and would not keep him from killing. Crawling up over the edge of the enemy gun pit, Iresk reached out with cold metallic claws. A fleshy face contorted with fear to greet him. The creature fired its puny weapon point blank into Iresk, the las blast leaving a glowing slash of superheated metal across the Immortal's forehead. Such feeble attacks were as nothing to the Immortal. Closing his claws around the mortal's neck, Iresk squeezed until blood and meat flowed out between his fingers. Flinging down the corpse, Iresk rose up to his feet. His leg had finally reformed beneath him, the living metal limb smooth and powerful once more. At that same moment, 3 more enemies spilled into the gun pit, firing their weapons in panicked bursts as they charged. Rising up to his full, terrifying height, Iresk swung around his pulsing Tesla carbine, the storm of lightning it unleashed illuminating his skull-like death mask as his foes were turned to ash. Doom Blades. Operated by slaved Necron Warriors but guided by super-complex navigation programs, these contragravity craft move with a speed and agility no living pilot could hope to match. Borne aloft by the ancient technologies of the Cryptex, the Doom Blades were first created as deep void fighters, though time has proven them equally adept as operating in atmospheric conditions. Doom Blades are often utilized as scouts by the Necron armies, a role in which they excel, harassing enemy formations and descending upon lone units like mechanical carrion birds. Streaking ahead of the steady metallic march of the legions, Doom Blades tumble and twist across the battlefield at breakneck speeds, seeking out new foes for their legions to crush. Once a flight of these craft is set upon its task, it will not stop until its target is reduced to charred, smoking remains. Monoliths. The monolith is an ancient war monument of unimaginable destructive potential. When its massive silhouette looms over a battlefield, it will lay waste to entire armies with strobing torrents of Gauss fire and the deafening crack of its particle whip. Few armies can stand long before the immense firepower of the monolith, Living troops are reduced to their component atoms by its punishing Gauss flux arcs, while tanks rupture and explode in showers of molten steel as it focuses its energies upon them. By contrast, enemy ordnance has little effect on the shell of a monolith. When damaged, the war machine's armor reflexively enacts self-repairs. Sparking rents in its hull are sealed by living metal, and impact craters smooth over as the reactive substance seeks to reassert its original form. The true power of the monolith, however, lies not in its offensive capabilities or phenomenal endurance, but in the... I'm sorry, this seems to be a little garbled. But in the entrance to a captive wormhole that flickers at its core. This eternity gate links the monolith to the vessels and tomb worlds of its dynasty, allowing reinforcements to appear at the monolith's location almost instantaneously. Via these space-folding corridors, an overlord can summon forth legion after legion of warriors from the very heart of his tomb world, with which to drown a world in its own dead. Lychguard. Marching in precise step with their overlord, Lychguard are an impressive and terrible sight to behold upon the battlefield. Wielding lightning-tipped war scythes or spectral hyperphase swords, they exact a bloody toll from the Necron's foes, their crackling blades carving through armor and flesh in welters of blood. Appointed to serve as the eternal protectors of their overlord, Lychguard tower over most mortal opponents. In battle, these imposing bodyguards remain in close proximity to their master, shielding him from the crude weapons of lesser foes. As befits their exalted status, they are gifted with more durable living metal bodies than the bulk of Necron soldiery, and their energized dispersion shields are able to turn Power Blade and Plasma Bolt with equal ease, making these elite Necrons even tougher to destroy. As the favored bodyguards of the Necron nobility, the engrammic protocols of Lychguard are substantially more advanced than those of warriors or immortals, and they are able to act autonomously if needed. Should their master decree it, they will fight from the front, guiding the legions in the absence of their lord. Deathmarks. Crackling into reality in the middle of battle to annihilate their enemies, Deathmarks are the assassins of the Necron cohorts. These specialist killers are possessed of a patience known only to the undying, and once a Deathmark has marked its prey, nothing will stand between it and its target. Unerringly accurate and single-minded in their devotion to the kill, they are often employed to locate and destroy enemy commanders, or hunt down priority targets in order to disrupt their foe's strategy. Though some Pharaons consider the use of the Deathmarks to contravene the ancient Necron tier codes of honor, none can dispute their effectiveness when given a target. Deathmarks have the terrifying ability to slip beyond real space to pursue their quarry, ambushing from pocket dimensions detached from the material universe. From these timeless places, they dispassionately analyze the flow of battle, awaiting the perfect moment to flicker into reality and strike. Physical defenses offer no sanctuary against a squad of Deathmarks. Towering ramparts, subterranean bunkers, and vast gateways are bypassed as though no barrier existed at all. Few are they who have fallen beneath the crosshairs of a Deathmark's synaptic disintegrator and lived to know of it. War engines. War unending has driven the Necrons to develop myriad engines of destruction, and through them they have perfected the art of invasion and terror tactics. Night scythes scream down from the skies in the vanguard of their armies, the sickle-shaped craft scorching the enemy with attack runs of lashing Tesla fire. As a forerunner of an incursion, the Night Scythe is agile enough to slip past planetary defenses, while a speculum affixed to the underside of its hull projects a wormhole gateway, allowing troops to be delivered directly into battle. In their wake, supersonic doom scythes scour the skies of enemy aircraft, opening the way for a full-scale invasion. These craft are armed with terrifying death rays, energy weapons of incredible potency that can carve through even the thickest armor with horrifying ease. Gliding over the battlefield, annihilation barges specialize in obliterating infantry, their twin Tesla destructors ripping apart enemy formations in storms of arcing energy discharge. Living tissue is especially vulnerable to the guns housed by these weapon platforms, as flesh cooks under the extreme currents forced through it. Living metal. The war machines of the Necrons are things of impossible science and countless arcane technologies. To the young races of the galaxy, the energies and weaponry of these strange engines of destruction are more akin to magic than anything recognizable as physical engineering. Living metal is a perfect example of this kind of advanced technology. A substance that defies harm by literally healing itself before the eyes of its attacker. Though the means can vary between dynasties and the skills of the cryptex that serve them, this miracle is often the result of billion-strong swarms of nanoscarabs crawling under the skin of the war machine. Like the living cells of biological creatures, they will seek out damaged areas and cluster around them, mouths the size of atoms chewing up matter and forging it back together. However, as with most of the Necrons' arcane techno-sciences, there are almost as many ways to manipulate matter as there are cryptex. Captive phase gates, subatomic infusers, and temporal loop shrouds can all exhibit similar effects to nanoscarab swarms. To an overlord, how these abilities work are of little concern, as long as they do. And that is where we are going to bring this video to a close. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, sharing the video, and definitely leaving a comment, especially if you've made it this far. Leave a comment if you've made it this far without falling asleep or turning the video off. There are a couple of fairly major fires near me right now, so I don't know if I will need to evacuate. If that does happen, this weekend's Ring World may be delayed. But y'all know, because it'll be delayed. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.